Welcome to the Rock Interview Series with host Thomas S. Orwatt Jr.
Welcome to episode number 63 of the Rock Interview Series. I'm Thomas Orwatt Jr. It is October 14th, 2022, and for this feature, I have vocalist, songwriter Chaz West as my guest. Chaz is currently promoting his band Westbound, which released their first record in 2019 entitled Volume 1. Westbound is currently on tour promoting this release. Chaz is also in a band called the Resurrection Kings, which features rock legend Vinny Appice on drums and Craig Goldy on guitar. In addition, Chaz has been a member of the Jason Bonham Band, the Lynch Mob, and Foreigner. During this interview, we discussed it all. So here he is, Chaz West. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Rock Interview Series. This is episode number 63, and we have a very special guest with us today. We have Chaz West with us, who's been in many bands over the years, and we're going to try to talk a little bit about every single band that he's played in. And
wow.
So we're going to start off. First, we're going to start off with what you're currently doing. You have a band called Westbound, which put out a record in 2019 called Volume 1. And you're currently on tour right now with Westbound. You played a gig yesterday, I believe, in New Jersey, and you're in Queens, New York today, and tomorrow you'll be in Niagara Falls. So let's just start off talking about Westbound. You guys, put the record out in 2019. You did some touring, and then the pandemic hit, and kind of like put a halt on that. So give us an update on what's going on, and how was your gig yesterday?
Oh, it was good. Unfortunately, we got hit with pouring rain. But, it was still great. The show went great. The audience was great. People were really cool. So, I love that venue. I've known the owner for years. So, so it was cool. I used to live in Jersey many years ago when I was a kid. So it's kind of like coming home, I see sometimes I see friends I haven't seen for years. So that, we reconnected through social media. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, what happened? Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. We got stopped dead in our tracks. We started making some noise in 2019. The record came out. Everything was starting to happen. More bigger things were going to happen in 2020, starting in April. First show was at the Viper Room, and then we were going on tour from there, and bigger shows, and maybe bigger things in the summer, and everything stopped. And at that time, I was like, well, this might be 3 to 6 months. I was like, 18 months pretty much, except for streaming shows. And I did a couple of those, and then we did the Viper Room the end of last year. And I was just like, this, everybody's like, well, you're gonna do Volume 2. And I'm like, yeah, but Volume 1 didn't really get a fair shake. Okay, I mean, it came out, we started making some noise, people started paying attention, and then everything stops. And people's attention span these days is from minute to minute, right?
Yeah.
So 18 months, 2 years later, forget it. So that's why I decided, as John Lennon's saying, it's like that song, it's like starting over again, So, I hired Jody Best, Best Bet Promotions, because I knew she's fantastic at what she does, what she's done for Def Leppard and Tesla and Dirty Honey and so many other artists. And I said, you know what? And she loved this stuff. She loved the band. So I was like, let's get me a lot of, as many interviews as possible. Let's get this out. So let people know the main reason the band is still together. We didn't break up during the pandemic, and we are starting to tour again. And that was this past summer, we started again. We had a false start back in January because we came out for shows that were postponed from the year prior twice. And it's January in New England. And I hear, it might be some bad weather. I'm like, yeah, so what? They're not used to snow in New England in January? And like, that should be the normal thing. But sure enough, we did one show, and then a blizzard hit, and 3 feet of snow, and the city cancels the venues the city, because of the plowing and all that.
Yeah.
So we were like, are you kidding me? Everything's been postponed for, and then twice these string of shows were. So we were able to redo them again. We did them in June, July, and now we're back now. But this is just a few shows, and then we go to Whiskey A Go-Go in my adopted hometown of Los Angeles, and the entire band. We're headlining the Whiskey A Go-Go next weekend, and then we go to Tennessee, which that'll be a first for Westbound, both in Nashville and Columbia. So
yeah. The record Volume 1 is outstanding. I mean, if you love melodic rock, If you like, White Snake, Foreigner,
Right.
Bad Company, Brian Howe
Led
version of it.
Zeppelin, Aerosmith, yeah.
Of course, Zeppelin, yes, and we're definitely going to talk about Zeppelin in a little
Some
while. That's for
Dio,
sure.
here's some Dio influence too.
Yeah.
Put it all in a blender and mix it up. There you go.
Yeah,
Right.
it's awesome, especially the two singles that you released from it, Never Surrender and Dance of Life. I mean, those are great singles. There's videos of both of those songs. I highly recommend people that haven't watched them to check them out. Great videos, great songs.
The Westbound Officials website has all the videos on there. And there's live performances also. So, yes, along with the tour dates. So,
right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the band and briefly how the band got together?
Okay, well, the band came together because Serafino Perugino, the president of Frontiers Music, offered me a solo deal after I did a record called Resurrection Kings. I've done two now, but at that time, and Vinny Appice on drums, Craig Goldy on guitar. And it started with, we had songs that we had written years ago we planned on doing something with. And then I got busy doing something else, and he got busy doing Dio Disciples, after Ronnie passed, before the pandemic. So it never really came to fruition. And then we had these songs. And so we presented them to Frontiers. This is going back now. And they offered us a deal. So we did it. What happened was that Serafino contacted me and said, I love your voice. I love your ideas. I want to do something just separately with you also, and I was like, wow, because I was already thinking in the back of my mind, I'd love to do my own thing, but I need the opportunity and the vehicle to do it. And, I've had some success, but I didn't sell millions and millions of records. And, it was like at that point in my life, but everything I'd done, I'd been, hired singer for so many bands, starting with, Bonham, with Jason Bonham Band. That is like, well, unless, a few years ago when the late, great Eddie Van Halen was still alive, he's going to call me, or Joe Perry, or Jimmy Page, who I've met a few times. I was like, I think I'm ready to step up and do my own thing now, like David Coverdale did with, started Deep Purple and Whitesnake. That's just an example. So, but it was like, I need the opportunity, a vehicle, and Serafino provided me for that. So we did it. I was like, he goes, I want you to work with a producer writer though. Do you have anybody in mind? And I had a couple of guys in mind. He had somebody too. And eventually I said, I've worked with Roy Z before on a record called Tribe of Gypsies. We did a few years ago, came out in Japan and the Asian countries. We toured with Kiss and Alice in Chains, briefly. So anyway, so I was like, well, what about Roy Z? And I really? I go, yeah, Roy's a friend of mine and we've worked together before. Highly respected producer, Judas Priest and Sebastian Bach. Bruce Dickinson, Rob Halford, Sebastian Bach. So, they were all like thumbs up. So, and Z had contacted Z and he was all in. And so we started writing. It was just like, okay, we worked out a deal and, they advanced me some money and then it was like, okay. And we were on our way. And then I was like, okay, now I really have the vehicle I needed, to do my own thing. And I want guys that are going to make this a band. Like I want this to be a real band, not just a quote project, which, Resurrection Kings, like we did a few shows, but everybody was busy doing other things, then he would like, oh, like we had a whole tour offered. It's like, oh, I got Last in Line. And Goldie's like, oh, I got to do a Dio Disciples. And they understand, and then I had something else and make that. So I was like, now I have my own thing. I don't want to go through that again. So I want guys who are going to make this a priority. I understand you have to do different things sometimes to make a living, but as long as you make this a priority, okay? So I was very careful about who I chose. And so he and I are working together, writing the songs. And then I brought in my bro, Dave Chili Moreno, who's a phenomenal drummer, who I've known for over two decades. We used to be roommates, I was a kid living at his house. And what was I going to say? So, he also plays a Puddle of Mudd.
Yeah.
So he played Tribe of Gypsies with Roy Z and I also. So I knew that would work. And we wrote Dance of Life probably like the first day we got together, like within a half hour to an hour. The majority of that song was done. Z and I got together. He had some chord progression ideas and I had some melody ideas and some, scratch lyrics. And then we brought in with Chili and boom, that helped. That brought it to the next level and smoothed out the edges and the song was pretty much done. So that started from there. But I also knew I wanted, you know, in my mind, I had a guitar player. I wanted a combination: Jimmy Page, Joe Perry, Eddie Van Halen, the same three guys I just mentioned. That, you know, if they called me, you know, I would go, okay, I'll be a hired singer for you, no problem, you know. So, and I was like, that's what I want, playing wise, and also image wise, and, you know, cool, no attitudes, no ego problems, no dependence problems, nothing, everything cool, you know. And my friend Stephen McGrath, who's the bassist for Billy Idol, told me about this guy, you know, his friend Jimmy. And we're doing this jam. And I went down, it was like down at the Venice Beach. And I was like, who is this guy? Because the light bulb went off. I'm like, oh my God, it's exactly what I've been looking for in every way. His playing, his style, his showmanship, his stage presence, his image, everything. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, okay, he's probably doing some other big stuff. I just don't know. No, he hadn't really, just never gotten the break. He came close a couple of times, but he stayed friends with Steven. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons Steven introduced him to me. And so I got Jimmy in, you know, he was all in, he was all on board, and I knew it was exactly what I wanted. And he was going to be, you know, dedicated and make it a priority. Jason Cornwell, the bassist, I'd played with a few times in another project. And I knew him he played with Eric Martin. I know Eric, so I knew it. And it's the same thing, a great guy. And he's really tapped into the East Coast scene and everything also, more than myself. So, and then the newest member, this guy named T-Bone. T-Bone used to be in the band Government Mule. And, you know, he joined during the pandemic, believe it or not, because we were only able to do 2 streaming shows in the year 2020. All the way through to the end of 2021. And that was, once was Monsters of Rock Cruise, and another one was an endorser, ChromaCast Sawtooth. We did 2. And the guy I was going to use wasn't available. So I knew T-Bone. We had played like a New Year's Eve party right before everything shut down, the last New Year's Eve, right? And I knew he was a pro and he was really good. So I contacted him like 2 days before. The guy was going to do it, couldn't do it. I'm like, can you do this? It's a streaming thing. You know, we can take a break if there's a mess up. They're supposed to look like a live show, but they'll edit it. It's fine. So, and he came through. And then we had a little viewing party at my friend's pub in Hollywood. And, you know, outside, and it's July of 2020. And he came to me and said, I want to be in this band. And I'm like, really? I'm like, well, I don't know, man. We might not do anything for 3 to 6 months. Who knew it was going to be 18, right? And he goes, I don't care. I want to be in the band. And I'm like, great. And he plays second guitar too, because Royce was not always available. He's busy with, you know, producing, as he's producing, I mean, with all the artists he has. And so I knew that. So the fact he played second guitar also, besides just playing keys, main thing was his keys. So yeah, so I felt I had the nucleus of a real band, you know. And you know, every once in a while there might be, thankfully, we haven't had to switch except for drummers. You know, Chili been busy with Puddle sometimes. So my friend Brian Tishy, who also co-wrote and recorded 2 songs on the record with me, you know, and he's my bandmate. We have an all-star Zeppelin tribute band called the Moby Dicks. He's come in and done some shows. And I know a friend of mine here on the East Coast that's done a few. But besides that, you know, the band is, you know, we're back out there again, slowly but surely, as they say.
Yeah,
Frankly, don't call me Shirley. Anyway,
do you foresee Westbound as being your main focus going forward?
Absolutely. Like I said, unless one of those, well, one of them's dead now. So those 2 guys, maybe might be 1 or 2 others. Yes, this is where my focus is. This is my, you know, we're going to do, everybody's like, you're going to do volume 2. You know, the first record was volume. Yes, but as I felt, we needed to get back out there with, you know, not so volume 1 is just not forgotten about because of the pandemic. Obviously, we would have been touring on volume 2 by last year had this not happened, you know?
Yeah. In the current live shows that you're doing, how much of the volume 1 record are you performing live?
We usually do about 5, 6 songs.
Wow, that's good.
Then I'll do some Zeppelin too. Obviously, it's, you know, if I want to get paid decently, the promoters, venue owners, they're like, is he going to do some Zeppelin? You know, ask the agent, and a Bonham song or 2, because it's part of my, you know, career resume. So, yeah. But, you know, I've made it work where, at least I've been told that by a lot of fans and friends, that the way I'm combining it, mixing it up, even one song we kind of go into, I'm not going to give away the surprise, but yeah. And they're like, man, it's really well done the way you're doing that, where you're intertwining these songs together. So that's, that to me was a real compliment. It made me feel good because, as I said, this is the first time I'm in the driver's seat, right? So, and it's a double-edged sword. You get all the credit, but you get all the blame for everything that goes wrong, which, on the road, it's like anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So,
Yeah. Well,
especially this fucked up day and age, the way things are just coming back,
Yeah. The one thing about Frontier's music label is that they really have a lot of great records that they put out.
Really do.
And there are a lot of, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of projects. And unfortunately, a lot of these projects never get off the ground other than just being as far as being just a release and there's no live show. So I'm really happy that Westbound is actually a real band, actually playing going on a real tour and has a real future. So that's pretty exciting, I think.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. Yeah. That was my main focus, and I knew I'd make it work one way or another. We're going to do another record, whether it's going to be with Frontiers yet, I don't know. It's still, things are still being talked. We're still talking, let's put it that way.
Right.
But there's other avenues. I'll always, no matter what happens, I'll be very grateful to Frontiers and Serafino, especially Serafino and Mario, because they gave me this opportunity and to be able to have this vehicle to be able to take further, So
yeah. Well,
take it to the next level. So yeah.
One of the releases that you put out after Westbound was another Resurrection Kings release called Stargazer. That came out in 2021. Was that record mainly because of the pandemic that you guys decided to do that?
Yes, it was well, no, actually it was decided before pandemic, but when we ended up recording the record, none of us were ever together in a room together because of the pandemic. Even videos were done separately, photos, everything, because it was a whole new world. So, but it was cool, at least something that that was creative to do during the pandemic. So yeah.
How difficult is that for you as a performer to record and write a record that way, as opposed to actually having a group of people in the same room?
I'm more old school, and I do prefer that. But you make do. I mean, the producer is in Italy. He was living in Italy, Alessandro. So in this day and age, it, of course, with costs and everything else, it makes it much more cost effective and easy. But and you can do Zoom, FaceTime. Pull acoustic guitars or whatever and do it that way. So just like we're doing right now, Yeah. So for that was still able to happen during the pandemic. Call me or Goldy would say, hey, can you do, let's get on Skype or whatever. I think at that time, FaceTime, and hey, I got to say, can you come up with a melody for this? Well, let's do this face to face, which I prefer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the Resurrection Kings, again, a great band with some great songs, really cool album art. But you don't play live, and it's really a shame. And like you said earlier, it's because, the other members have other commitments. I get it. But I mean, as a fan, you hear this music and you want to see it live in your face, and it's really, I would love to see that band perform live. Do you think there's any chance of ever happening? Like a proper tour?
Like I said, after the first record, we did like 5 shows, maybe with this tour, with the way it was with the pandemic and everybody's schedules. Well, nobody's really doing fuck all, but I mean, maybe a little bit it started out, but, and then Goldy was ill. I think he's doing much better now, but, but he lost some family members and things like that. So he was being overly cautious maybe, but I shouldn't say that because I understood, and I was like, okay, whatever, I'm cool. I'm vaccinated. I'm cool with getting into a room together, but if he doesn't feel comfortable about it, I understand. And I respect that, as a friend and as a friend, a brother, and fellow artists. So, because we started Resurrection Kings was all because songs we started writing years ago. The first single, Living Out Loud, we wrote in my house like 5-10 years ago. You know? So, as I said, we were planning to do something with it. It didn't work out, and then along came Frontiers, and he presented the songs, and they flipped out over it and loved it and loved the concept, and there we go.
Yeah.
And it worked out for me because I said it gave me a vehicle to do my own thing, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that's probably one of, you know, I mean, the first record I pushed as far as getting us shows. I did it. I was the one who got us most of our shows that we did, you know, through my connections. But then the second one, I'm busy trying to just get Westbound, and that was my focus. And I'm like, I'll do the record, and if there's something out there, but I don't have time to go trying to push it on my own. I'm pushing my own band, and this is hard enough because of the pandemic stopping everything dead in its tracks. So
yeah, that's understandable. I want to talk about some of the other bands that you were in. You were in Lynch Mob from 2011 to 2012. What was that experience like for you playing with George Lynch?
Well, that was the second time. I did it also in 2004.
Okay.
2005. Yeah. So that was great. George and I got along great. You know, he's like that alien. You know, he's brilliantly talented. He's like an alien. Like, wow. You know, it's like him, and I played Jakey Lee too. I played with Jakey Lee. It's like the guitar is part of their body. You know, it's just right. That's just, it's in their essence. It's who they are. You know, great guy, great sense of humor. You know, I mean, he changes, him and Jake Bell, they change, you know, singers like people change their underwear and socks. Yeah, you know, and I think, and sometimes like that might be, you know, and George even admitted to me one time, like, you know, I'd probably, because, you know, he grew up with Eddie and those guys, you know, he knew them, he saw them, he was around the same time they were playing the Starwoods together and all that. And he told me, he's like, you know, Eddie stuck with Dave, you know, maybe I should have, he admitted that to me a couple times, you know, and I think he was hoping that would happen with Oni, and then it did for a bit. And then, you know, they've been like all marriages, sometimes you need a break. So
yeah, he had like about 14 bad marriages. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I always get along great. We still get along good, and I see him. You know, there's never a bad word. No, you know, and I had a good laugh. I said, because I'd always, you know, I was the what am I, the rock singer mistress that comes in when you know, like the old couple, the old married couple that has a fight, falling out, and one steps out. That's with me twice. Called me twice about me and him would, you know, have a falling out. So yeah, and it's funny because I would laugh with him about it because he used to be my neighbor, Oni, for a while.
Wow.
So we'd hang. Yeah, that's how I got to really know him. So we'd laugh about it, you know.
Yeah, and then prior to that, you were in Foreigner briefly from 2004 to 2005. What was that experience like? And how many gigs did you play with Foreigner?
What was that?
And how many gigs?
We only did a couple of shows because Mick, it was brand new, and he had, you know, just gotten sober. And he was, you know, he didn't want to push it too much because he didn't want to fall off the wagon. It was great. And of course, Jason Bonham was the drummer, you know, so we were in each other. My former manager, Phil Carson, was managing it. So that's how I was brought in, you know. It was great. I mean, I've always been grateful. I learned a lot from Mick from the brief amount of time that I spent with him, you know, and he's brilliant and a workaholic, you know, and I wish it had lasted longer. You know, that's you know, that's the breaks. It didn't. But I'll always be grateful to my time and the fact that he was willing to even give me credit. Like, you know, like not that I'd never existed. We go to Wikipedia. My name is listed. That was really, you know, that meant a lot to me, you know, because he didn't do that. I didn't do any records. I just did some couple shows, and he didn't want to tour too much then. And it would have stopped if Kelly Hansen hadn't come along, probably, you know, it would have lasted longer. I don't know. I always make a joke and say, yeah, I was in the band for about 5 minutes, you know. It was a bit longer than that, but where they had a 40-something year career, it's about equivalent to that. So
yeah, when you've joined like an established band like that, is there like a contract that they make you sign right away, or what was this?
Well, usually they feel you out first, you know, and then they present you with a contract. You know, I remember when Bonham first happened, it was like, okay, here's your itinerary we're leaving in 2 weeks, and they were testing me, you know, see if he holds up. You know, his voice held up. Do we we still like each other? We like him still after the couple of weeks. It was like maybe 3 weeks or something. Yeah. Then I was presented with a contract, and then you're presented with a check. And, you know, back then that's the way it was in the 90s. So yeah, you know, but normally it's kind of like, okay, this is kind of almost the audition process. You pass the first step, the audition. Now let's see if you're going to be just, the fill-in a guy that's, very briefly here, or we're going to keep you in the band.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, the last thing I want to talk about,
Sure.
and again, thank you very much for your time. I know that you don't have that much time. You're on tour
Yeah.
right now, but the
Yeah.
Jason Bonham Band, which you played in from 1995 to 97, quite frankly, you're
probably
probably
longer than that. To be quite honest, I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh no,
it was 95 to 2000. Yeah, let me think. 90. Okay, the end of 99, and then again we got back together for a brief period of time in 2003 and 4.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Before
that.
Foreigner, right before Foreigner.
Right. Well, I mean, you were a great voice for the Jason Bonham Band. I mean, there's the Led Zeppelin record that Jason Bonham did, is called "In the Name of My Father," the Zepp set, live from Electric Ladyland, which was released in '97. You know what? I love listening to Led Zeppelin, and I've been listening to this live record for like the last month, and it's like, yeah, it's like I'm totally into it. Like I prefer just as much as Zeppelin. I mean, you just nail the nuances of Robert Plant, unlike anybody else I've ever heard in my life.
Wow, that's really a compliment. Thank you very much. Because it's funny, because that whole thing, there was a lot of circumstances, but Jason and I always felt it wasn't our greatest performance. That's what we felt, and I heard it. And there was a lot of, we had been on the road for months, and with flights were late. I remember I was stuck in the airport waiting for my girlfriend to come in from LA, and then and we're in New York, and so I never even got a chance to do a warm-up sound check. I didn't even got a shower. It was one of those things, because where we were staying is further than the city, and the city, only place that traffic is worse than LA is New York City, during rush hour time. So, there were circumstances. I never felt I was at my best. And Jason, of course, didn't feel that either. He was, so, but yeah, thank you. It is what it is. And it did show passion and realness, and it showed that, we had like 100 people in the studio, and we made like a live show, and the people seemed to love it. And that's the most important thing. And, we weren't trying to make money off Zeppelin songs. It was all for charity, and it showed the purity and the, as I said, that it was real, that there's nothing fake about this, you even hear some feedback noises here and there. So,
That's what makes it great. I mean, it has that vibe of a real live performance, and I love that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And that's what we did. We had 100 people. You hear the people. That wasn't, piped in noises. They were there. There was like 100 people that were there. I've heard about where there was never really people in the studio, and they used the recording of some, people clapping and screaming to make it sound like, no, they were really there. And that was really, that was very special to me. First time I'd ever been there, so.
As a vocalist, what was the most difficult song of Zeppelin's to cover from their catalog for you?
Vocalist, I guess it would be Since I've Been Loving You, maybe. But I loved it. I mean, I would just wail at the top of my lungs, and they used to make wagers on how long can he hold that note out for there. That's that part, Said I've been crying, that part.
Yeah.
How long can he hold it out for, And there'd be wagers put on it. So, right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And have you? I thought I read something recently that there's talk of possibly you and Jason collaborating again in the future.
Possible. Right now, he's busy with Sammy and other things, but yes, we're still on great terms. And I just saw his son. His son's opening for him tonight at the Greek Theater. Jagger, who I've known since he was born. I knew about him before he was born because I was on tour with his father. But and I was just hanging. He did a show at the Viper Room a couple months ago, and Dad was impressed, and he's getting him to open for him at the Greek Theater. So I'm happy. It's so funny though, seeing him go from, Jagger, when he was a baby and a little boy, to then he was like doing a rap thing, and then he was a bodybuilder, and now he's doing like a pop punkish kind of thing, and it's cool though. It's good.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, anything's possible. Jason and I, like I said, we're still on great terms, and no matter what, I'll always be very grateful to him because he gave me my first break.
Yeah.
Nobody. I hadn't done anything major, and I beat out like 700 some singers. you know, my life changed. And probably a lot of the people I played with after that never might have happened if it wasn't for playing. You play with the son of the greatest drummer of all time, and you know, Jason's no slouch either. But I'm just saying, with Bonzo, all of a sudden, every major drummer wants to play with you. You know, Vinny Appice and Appice, and the list went on. You know, I think the only guys maybe I'd love to, Alex Van Halen, Joey Kramer, and who else? I mean, Tommy Lee. I mean, those are like the only major drummers between Bonham and doing the Bonzo bashes and everything that I've never played with, you know, at least on a song.
Right.
You know, so
yeah. Well, that's awesome, Chaz. Once again, thanks for this interview. Best of luck on these upcoming tour dates.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to hearing more music from you, and more Westbound music, especially.
Hopefully seeing you tomorrow night.